I never believed one small piece of jewelry could rip through my life the way it did. The night before my wedding, my mother placed my grandmother's wedding ring in my hand, the same ring that had been passed down for generations. I promised I would guard it with my life, and for a while I thought I had, until the day I opened my dresser drawer and the small wooden box was gone. My heart stopped. Moments later, Claire, my younger sister, strolled in with new clothes hanging off her shoulders, a shiny phone in her hand, and a grin that felt too sharp to be innocent. I wanted to tell myself I was wrong. But then Mom walked in asking where the family heirloom ring was. That was the moment Claire's face drained of color and my world shifted. She expected me to cry, to collapse in shame and despair, but instead I smiled, though inside I was breaking. Because deep down I knew this was only the beginning. What Claire had stolen was not just a diamond, but the history of our family, the trust between sisters, the respect my grandmother had carried her whole life. And what I would soon discover was that her betrayal opened the door to secrets buried deep, to dangerous people I never wanted near us, and to choices that would test the very meaning of loyalty. Would Claire's mistake be the crack that destroyed us completely, or would it be the fire that forced me to fight for justice? This is the story of how my family was nearly torn apart, and why silence became my sharpest weapon. Us completely, or would it be the fire that forced me to fight for justice? This is the story of how my family was nearly torn apart, and why silence became my sharpest weapon. That afternoon, the house felt heavier than usual, as if every corner carried a weight I could not see. I kept pulling the dresser drawer in and out, my fingers brushing the empty space where the box had been, hoping it would reappear by some miracle. The drawer smelled faintly of cedar and fabric softener, the familiar sense of safety, but now they mocked me. My hands trembled, so I pressed them against my thighs to stop the shaking. Claire leaned against the doorway, smacking her gum like she had not a care in the world. She was 24, but carried herself like a teenager, restless, reckless, always convinced she deserved more than what she had. Her shiny phone lit up with messages, and she laughed softly at the screen, avoiding my eyes. Her laugh was sharp, hollow, and it cut through me like glass. Before I could speak, Mom walked in, balancing a laundry basket against her hip. She glanced around the room, then looked directly at me. "Where is the heirloom ring, Donna?" I froze, staring at her, then at Claire. The words stuck in my throat. Claire's smirk faltered her face, paling, her eyes flicking down to the carpet. I forced a smile, though my chest was tightening. "It is safe, Mom." "Do not worry." Mom frowned, not convinced, but she shifted the basket and left the room. The silence that followed pressed down on me like a blanket too heavy to breathe under. Claire looked at me, then startled, almost angry that I had not betrayed her. I wanted to ask her why she would do this, but the words tangled inside me. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling fan spinning slowly above me. Claire's voice carried down the hall as she whispered on the phone. Every muffled laugh, every soft pause was a reminder of the betrayal sitting between us. I touched my bare finger where the ring should have been, closing my eyes against the sting of tears. My grandmother's voice echoed in my memory, the night she slipped the box into my hands. "Take care of it, Donna. It holds more than diamonds. It holds us." Sleep never came. The hours dragged, each tick of the clock mocking me. By morning I was drained, hollow, but resolved. I would not collapse. Claire thought she had won, but I knew the truth had a way of surfacing. And when it did, she would not be ready. The kitchen smelled of coffee and bacon when I came downstairs. Dad was already at the table reading the newspaper, glasses perched on his nose. He glanced up, sensing something in my expression. "You look pale, Donna. Rough night." I forced a shrug, pouring myself a cup of coffee. Just could not sleep. Claire breezed in a moment later, her hair still damp from the shower, humming like she had not stolen the one thing that mattered most to me. She kissed Dad on the cheek, grabbed a piece of toast, and sat down like everything was normal. I watched her carefully, searching for guilt, but she met my eyes with defiance. Dad cleared his throat. "Claire, where are you getting all this money lately? New clothes, that phone. You working more hours at the diner?" Claire laughed lightly. "Yeah, picked up some doubles. Tips have been good." Her lie slid so easily off her tongue I almost believed her. Dad nodded slowly, but suspicion lingered in his eyes. He went back to his paper, but I could feel his thoughts circling. The day dragged on. I tried focusing on chores, folding laundry, vacuuming, but every task was hollow. I ended up in the attic, searching through old boxes of family photos, letting the dust sting my eyes. I found a picture of Grandma in her wedding dress, the ring shining faintly on her hand as she smiled at Grandpa. My chest tightened, and I pressed the photo to my heart. In the evening, Mom caught me alone in the yard while I was hanging sheets to dry. She studied me for a moment, her voice quiet but sharp. "I know something is wrong. Tell me the truth, Donna." I swallowed hard, my throat dry. It is fine, Mom, I promise. Her eyes narrowed, but she did not push. Instead, she reached out, smoothing the sheet against the line, her hand lingering as if she wanted to say more. Then she walked away, leaving me with the sinking weight of silence. Later that night, as the cicadas hummed in the trees, Claire slipped out the front door. I followed quietly, my bare feet padding against the porch. She met a man at the end of the driveway, his figure shadowed under the street lamp. He handed her something small and shiny. My breath caught as I watched her pocket it quickly before leaning in close. I could not hear the words, but the way she tilted her head, the way he touched her arm told me enough. I backed into the darkness, my heart hammering. She was deeper into something than I had feared, not just stealing from me, but tied to people I did not know, people who did not belong near us. When she came back inside, I pretended to be asleep, my body stiff under the covers. She slipped past my door, humming again, her footsteps light. I opened my eyes to the darkness, my chest aching. The ring was gone, but worse than that. The sister I thought I knew was slipping away into someone unrecognizable. I lay awake until dawn, clutching Grandma's photo under my pillow, promising myself I would not let this end without a fight. The morning after I saw Claire with that stranger under the street lamp, I tried to pretend life was ordinary, but everything around me looked different. The kitchen counter was cluttered with cereal boxes and half-empty mugs. The smell of coffee and buttered toast filled the air, and yet it all felt staged, like I was watching my family through a glass pane. Claire hummed as she buttered her toast, her new phone glowing on the counter, vibrating with messages she checked quickly, her thumb darting across the screen. Dad lowered his newspaper, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Claire, you have been spending money like water lately. You said tips at the diner were better, but come on, a new phone, clothes, shoes. Are you telling us the truth?" Claire rolled her eyes, sipping her orange juice. "Yes, Dad, tips are great. People are generous. You worry too much." I sat quietly sipping my coffee, watching the way she avoided his eyes. Mom busied herself at the sink, but I knew she was listening closely. Her back stiffened, her shoulders tightening. She glanced over her shoulder at me, then at Claire, but she said nothing. I could feel my stomach twist. Every lie Claire spoke was like another brick stacking on top of me. I thought of Grandma's voice again, warning me that the ring carried weight beyond gold or diamonds. It carried legacy, promises, and family. Later that afternoon, I went into town to clear my head. I parked my car outside the small bakery and ordered a coffee, the same place Grandma used to take me when I was little. The bell over the door jingled, and I turned. Claire walked in, her hair pulled back, sunglasses perched on her head, laughing loudly into her phone. She did not see me. She walked straight to a man at a corner table, the same man I had seen in the driveway the night before. He looked rougher in the daylight, unshaven, his shirt wrinkled. I ducked behind the pastry display, my heart racing. She slid into the chair, leaning across the table, her voice low but urgent. He handed her a small velvet pouch. She opened it quickly, her eyes gleaming, then slipped it into her purse. My chest clenched so tight I could barely breathe. The barista asked if I was okay. I nodded, quickly paid for my coffee, and hurried out. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel, sweat gathering at my temples. I knew then that the ring was gone for good. It had been pawned or traded, maybe already melted down. I wanted to scream, but instead I sat there shaking, tears burning in my eyes but refusing to fall. That evening, I confronted Claire in the living room. She was sprawled on the couch, her legs curled under her, flipping through channels like nothing in the world mattered. I stood in front of her, my voice shaking. "Where is the ring?" Her hand froze mid-click. She looked up at me, her face blank. "What a ring. Do not play with me. The family ring. You know exactly what I'm talking about." She smirked, setting the remote aside. "You think everything belongs to you, Donna? Maybe you are not the only one who deserves nice things." My jaw dropped. "That ring was not mine alone, Claire. It belonged to Grandma, to Mom, to this family." She shrugged. "It is just a piece of jewelry. Who cares?" I wanted to lunge at her to shake sense into her, but my legs felt rooted to the carpet. The silence stretched until Dad came in from the porch, his boots leaving faint tracks of dust on the rug. He looked between us, sensing the tension. "What is going on here?" "Nothing," Claire said quickly, picking up the remote again. I forced a smile, though it hurt. "Nothing, Dad." He eyed us both, suspicion heavy in his gaze, but he said nothing and went upstairs. Claire shot me a glare, daring me to expose her. My throat closed. That night I sat on my bed, staring at the empty box where the ring once rested. I thought about Grandma's wrinkled hands slipping it into mine, her eyes bright with pride. My chest ached. I felt like I had failed her. Days passed. Claire grew bolder, flaunting her new things. She came home with designer bags, shoes, even a gold bracelet that shimmered under the kitchen lights. Mom questioned her once, gently asking where she got the money. Claire laughed, saying her boyfriend helped her out. Mom's eyes darkened, but she stayed silent. One afternoon, Dad called us both into the dining room. His voice was sharp. "We need to talk about responsibility." He looked at Claire, then at me. "Your mother and I worked hard for everything in this house. We sacrificed. We built trust. If either of you forget that, this family will fall apart." Claire's lips tightened, her arms folded across her chest. I felt my cheeks burn, guilt prickling, even though I was not the guilty one. Afterward, Claire cornered me in the hallway. "You will regret crossing me," she hissed. I stared at her, my voice low. "You are already crossing yourself, Claire. You just haven't seen it yet." That night, as the cicadas droned outside and the house settled into silence, I made a promise to myself. I would not shout or fight her openly. I would wait, I would watch. I would find the right moment to bring everything to light. She thought she had silenced me, but silence was my weapon. The first crack came sooner than I expected. A few days later, Mom came into my room holding a letter. She looked shaken. It was addressed to Claire, but Mom had opened it by mistake. Inside was a bill from a pawn shop downtown. My heart pounded as she handed it to me. The description read, "One antique diamond wedding ring sold for cash." I felt the blood drain from my face. Mom's hands trembled. I knew something was wrong. "Tell me, Donna, what happened." I opened my mouth, but no words came. Instead, I pressed the letter to my chest, the edges cutting into my palm. I looked into her eyes, the same eyes that had once sparkled when she gave me the ring, and I saw the hurt already there waiting for confirmation. Before I could answer, we heard the front door open and Claire's laughter fill the hallway. Mom's face hardened, her jaw set. She turned toward the door, her body rigid. I stood frozen, clutching the letter, knowing the storm was about to break. The tension in the house that evening could have been sliced with a knife. Claire dropped her purse on the entryway table, still laughing from whatever joke her boyfriend had whispered to her outside, but the sound died the second she saw Mom waiting. Mom stood stiff in the middle of the living room, the pawn shop letter crumpled in her fist, her lips pressed into a thin line. I hovered behind her, clutching my arms tight across my chest, the weight of what I knew pressing down on me. Claire's smile flickered. "What's going on?" Mom's voice was quiet but sharp. "Do you have anything you want to tell me?" Claire blinked, her eyes darting from Mom to me and back. "About what?" Mom unfolded the letter, her hands shaking, and held it out. "About this." The silence that followed was unbearable. I could hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen, the faint tick of the grandfather clock in the hallway, even the rasp of Claire's breath as her bravado cracked. She snatched the letter from Mom's hand, scanned it quickly, and her face drained of color. "It's not what you think," she stammered. My chest clenched. I wanted to shout, to demand the truth right there, but I bit down hard on my tongue. Claire lifted her chin, her eyes narrowing. I was desperate. Derek needed help, and I couldn't just stand by. Mom's face darkened. "Derek, that man you've been sneaking around with. You sold your grandmother's wedding ring to cover for him." Claire flinched, her bravado crumbling. "He promised he would pay me back." Mom's voice broke. "That ring wasn't yours to sell. Do you understand what you've done?" I stepped forward, unable to hold back any longer. "It was in my room, Claire. In my drawer. You didn't even ask me. You just took it like everything else." Claire's mouth twisted. "You think everything belongs to you, Donna? You've always been Mom's favorite, Dad's golden child. For once I wanted something. For once I mattered more." The words sliced through me. I stared at her, my hands shaking, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. "You mattered, Claire. You always mattered, but you chose to throw it away." Dad's footsteps thundered on the stairs. He appeared in the doorway, his eyes scanning the scene, his jaw set. "What is going on here?" Mom held up the letter. "Your daughter pawned the family heirloom to give money to her boyfriend." Dad's face turned red, his eyes blazing. "Claire, is this true?" She opened her mouth, closed it again, then nodded weakly. "I was trying to help him. He was in trouble." Dad's voice was low and dangerous. "You sold our history for a man with gambling debts." Tears welled in Claire's eyes. "You don't understand. He loves me." Love, Dad spat the word like it burned his tongue. "Love doesn't steal from your family. Love doesn't ruin the people who raised you." Claire shook her head, her tears spilling now. "I didn't think it would get this bad. I thought I could fix it before anyone found out." I felt the sting of betrayal deep in my bones. I thought of Grandma's soft hands, the way she had pressed the ring into mine, her voice filled with trust. I had failed her. Or maybe Claire had failed all of us. The argument stretched late into the night. Mom wept quietly at the kitchen table, her face buried in her hands. Dad paced the floor, muttering about responsibility, about how years of sacrifice had been thrown away in one selfish act. I sat silently, my body numb, my eyes following Claire as she stood against the wall, her arms folded tightly, her face pale and drawn. Finally, Dad stopped pacing. Enough. Starting tomorrow, you will pack your things. You will move out and learn what it means to live without taking from others. Claire's eyes widened in shock. What? You can't do that? I'm your daughter. You stopped acting like our daughter when you chose Derek over this family. Dad said, his voice heavy with finality. Her lips trembled. Where am I supposed to go? That's your problem now, he said. You'll find out what the world is really like when you don't have us to clean up your mess. Claire burst into tears, storming up the stairs, slamming her bedroom door so hard the walls shook. The house fell silent except for Mom's muffled sobs. I sat there, my hands curled into fists, my heart aching. I had wanted justice, but watching my family splinter apart left me hollow. I looked at Dad, his face lined with exhaustion, and at Mom, her shoulders slumped with grief. The silence between us was unbearable. When I finally went upstairs, I passed Claire's door. I could hear her crying inside, muffled, broken, but I didn't stop. I went to my room, lay down on the bed, and stared at the ceiling. The ring was gone. My sister was unraveling, and my family was breaking beneath the weight of secrets and betrayal. I closed my eyes, knowing this was only the beginning. The next morning, the house felt different, quieter but tense, like a storm was gathering behind closed doors. I barely slept, and when I finally went downstairs, I found Dad already in the kitchen, his coffee untouched in front of him, his eyes fixed on the backyard through the window. Mom sat at the table with dark circles under her eyes, her hands wrapped tightly around a mug as if she could draw strength from its warmth. Nobody spoke. The weight of what had happened the night before pressed down on all of us. Claire came down late, her hair tangled, her eyes swollen from crying. She sat at the table without a word, pouring herself cereal as if nothing had changed. The sound of the spoon scraping the bowl was unbearable in the silence. Dad finally cleared his throat, his voice low but firm. You will start looking for a place today. Claire froze the spoon halfway to her mouth. You really meant it? Dad's eyes met hers, hard and unflinching. I meant every word. She dropped the spoon into the bowl, milk splashing on the table. That is not fair. I made one mistake. Mom's voice cracked. One mistake that shattered everything. Claire's eyes darted toward me, blazing with anger. You are loving this, aren't you? Watching me fall. I shook my head slowly. I am not loving anything, Claire. I am heartbroken. She scoffed, pushing away from the table so violently the chair screeched across the floor. You are all against me. Her footsteps thundered up the stairs again. The slam of her door made the walls rattle. Later that day, I went into town to run errands, but really I just needed space. I stopped by the grocery store picking up basics for Mom and ran into Mrs. Green, our neighbor, who seemed to know everything that happened on the street. She leaned close, lowering her voice. I saw Claire downtown with that boy again. Looked like trouble, if you ask me. I forced a polite smile, my stomach twisting. Thank you for telling me. On the drive home, my mind raced. Derek was not just a boyfriend, he was a sinkhole pulling her deeper. I had seen the way he looked at her, not like someone in love, but like someone who had found a lifeline for his own mess. When I pulled into the driveway, Claire was outside, sitting on the steps with a suitcase beside her. She looked small, fragile, like a child waiting for a ride. I got out of the car slowly. Where are you going? She shrugged, her eyes avoiding mine. Derek said I could stay with him for a while. My heart sank. Claire, that is not safe. Her voice sharpened. What choice do I have? Dad wants me out. You all hate me. Derek is the only one who wants me. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. He does not want you, Claire. He wants what you can give him. She stood clutching the handle of the suitcase. At least he needs me. I reached out my hand, brushing her arm, but she pulled away. I opened my mouth to plead again, but a car horn blared. A beat-up sedan pulled up to the curb, and Derek leaned out, grinning, his arm hanging casually on the door. Come on, babe. Claire grabbed her suitcase and hurried toward him. I stood frozen, the chill of dread crawling over me as she climbed in. Derek gave me a mocking salute before pulling away. I watched the car disappear down the street, my chest aching, my heart pounding with helplessness. That night, the house felt emptier than ever. Mom sat at the table, staring at the phone as if willing it to ring. Dad paced, muttering about responsibility and hard lessons. I sat silently, staring at the empty chair where Claire had always sat. The sound of her laughter, her voice, even her arguments echoed in my head. The days blurred. Mom called Claire's phone, but most times it went to voicemail. When she did answer, her voice was clipped, distant, filled with excuses. Derek needed help. Derek was working things out. Derek promised everything would be fine. Mom cried after every call. Dad grew angrier, and I felt the silence between us all hardening into something we could not break. One afternoon, nearly a week later, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Claire standing there, her clothes wrinkled, her face pale. She looked like she had not slept in days. She pushed past me into the house without a word and dropped onto the couch. Mom rushed in, relief flooding her face. "Claire, thank God." But Claire did not look at her. She buried her face in her hands, her voice muffled. "I messed up." Dad stepped into the room, his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. "What now?" Claire lifted her head, tears streaking her cheeks. "Derek took the money, all of it. He said he would pay back what he owed, but then he left." Mom gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. I felt sick, my stomach knotting tighter with every word. Claire's voice cracked. "He said he loved me, but he just wanted the money. Now he is gone and I have nothing." The room went silent. The only sound was the faint hum of the refrigerator. Finally, Dad spoke, his voice low and heavy. "That is the world you chose, Claire." She broke down then, sobbing into her hands, her whole body shaking. Mom moved to comfort her, but Dad stayed rooted in place, his face hard. I sat there torn between anger and pity, between the memory of the sister I had once loved and the stranger who had stolen from me. As night fell and Claire's sobs quieted, I realized something. This was not just about the ring anymore. It was about truth, about loyalty, about the lines between family and betrayal. And I knew the hardest part had not even begun. The night after Claire's breakdown felt like a fragile truce had settled over the house, but the silence carried sharp edges. Mom hovered near her as if she could shield her from the world, while Dad kept his distance, his disappointment hanging in the air like smoke. I tried to breathe through it, but every glance at my sister's pale face, every reminder of what she had done, pulled me deeper into the ache of betrayal. The following morning, I found her sitting at the kitchen table, staring at her phone with trembling hands. She looked up when I walked in, her eyes rimmed red. "He is not answering." He blocked me. I poured coffee, the bitterness matching the heaviness in my chest. "Claire, you need to understand Derek was never going to stand by you." She flinched as if I had struck her. "You think I do not know that now?" Mom bustled in, desperate to change the current. "Let's not fight this morning. We need to focus on what comes next." Dad appeared then, already in his work clothes, his face like stone. "What comes next is Claire finding a job and paying back what she took." Claire's lips parted, shock and fear clashing in her expression. "I do not even know where to start." His eyes were cold. "Then you had better figure it out." The slam of the front door when he left echoed through the house. Mom rubbed Claire's shoulder, but I saw the flicker in her eyes, the hurt and anger she tried to hide. Later that day, I drove to the pawn shop, a small bell chiming as I pushed open the door. The place smelled of dust and metal. Rows of jewelry gleamed under fluorescent lights, but none carried the weight of history like my missing ring. I approached the counter where a balding man polished a watch. "Can I help you?" he asked without looking up. I swallowed hard. "I am looking for a ring, gold antique with a sapphire. It belonged to my grandmother." He barely blinked. "We see a lot of rings." "Got a picture." I pulled out my phone and showed him a photo of me wearing it at an engagement party. He squinted, then shook his head. "Sorry." Something in his eyes told me more. My voice sharpened. "Did someone sell it here recently?" His shoulders lifted in a shrug. "If they did, it is long gone. Items move fast." I leaned closer, my pulse quickening. "Please, it is a family heirloom." For a moment, his expression softened. He sighed, glancing toward a back room. "Look, I can't tell you who brought it in, but if what you say is true, you might want to check with Carter's Jewelry downtown. Sometimes pieces move there." I thanked him, my voice shaking. As I stepped outside into the chilly air, I felt both closer and farther from the truth. Back home, I found Claire curled on the couch, her eyes lit briefly with hope when I entered. "Did you find it?" I shook my head, watching her crumble again. She whispered, "I did not know Derek would pawn it. He told me he had a plan." Her words sparked anger in me. "You did not know because you did not want to know." Her mouth opened, but no defense came. She turned away, silent tears streaking her face. That night, unable to sleep, I sat by my bedroom window, staring at the bare branches swaying outside. My reflection in the glass looked older, hardened. I thought of all the stories Mom had told us about that ring, how Grandma wore it on her wedding day, how it was meant to carry love through generations. Now it was out there, reduced to cash for someone else's selfishness. But something else stirred in me, a quiet certainty that this was not the end, that Claire's betrayal, Derek's schemes, and the lies tangled around us were only part of a larger truth waiting to surface. The next morning, Mom asked me to drive her into town. We stopped for groceries, but she seemed distracted. Finally, she admitted, "I have been hiding something from you and your sister." I stared at her, the cart halfway down an aisle. "What are you talking about?" She lowered her voice, her eyes darting around. The ring was not just sentimental. Your grandmother left instructions, and that ring is tied to her estate. Whoever holds it could claim more than just a piece of jewelry. The world seemed to tilt under my feet. Mom, why did you not say anything? Her hands trembled on the cart handle. Because I never thought it would come to this. I trusted both of you. My chest tightened as the truth sank in. Claire had not only pawned a ring, she had unknowingly given away the key to something far greater. And I realized as fear and determination surged together inside me that the fight ahead was about much more than recovering a piece of gold and sapphire. It was about protecting the legacy of our family, and it was only the beginning. I could not stop thinking about what Mom told me. The weight of her secret pressed into every corner of my thoughts, filling me with a restless energy that would not let me sleep. By morning, I had made up my mind. I needed answers, not guesses, and the only way to get them was to dig deeper. After breakfast, I asked Mom to sit with me in the living room. The curtains were half-drawn sunlight slanting across the rug. Claire hovered in the doorway, her face pale, her eyes hollow. Mom sighed and lowered herself into a chair, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Tell me everything, I said, my voice firmer than I expected. No more pieces, no more half-truths. Mom's lips pressed together as if the words might cut her on their way out. Finally, she said, when your grandmother passed, her will specified that the ring would stay with the eldest daughter of each generation, but there was more. Whoever held the ring had authority over the family property, including a small trust that was set aside decades ago. It is not much, but enough that greedy people might want it. I blinked, trying to absorb it. So Claire didn't just pawn a ring. She might have given someone else leverage over our inheritance. Claire stepped inside, then her hands twisting nervously. I didn't know, I swear. I thought it was just jewelry. Her voice cracked, and for a moment I saw the frightened little sister I used to protect. But the anger inside me still burned hot. You should have asked before trusting Derek. She flinched, tears filling her eyes. I know, and I would do anything to undo it. Dad came home early that afternoon, his tie loosened, his expression grave. He listened as Mom explained again, his jaw tightening with every word. Finally, he said, we need to see a lawyer. If that ring gives someone power over the estate, we cannot waste time. The next day, we sat in a wood-paneled office downtown facing Mr. Grant, a gray-haired attorney who had handled local family cases for decades. He adjusted his glasses, as Mom explained, then leaned back, his fingers steepled. He confirmed what she had said. The ring was more than symbolic. If it ended up in the wrong hands, someone could challenge our claim. Claire's face went pale and she whispered, Derek must have no idea, right? Mr. Grant gave a thin smile. Men like him often know more than they let on. If he sold it, we need to track where it went quickly. I felt my stomach twist, but also a spark of determination. I would not let Derek destroy what generations had built. Over the next week, I threw myself into searching. I went to Carter's jewelry like the pawnbroker suggested, showing them the photo again. The manager studied it, then nodded. Yes, that ring came through here. Sold just 3 days ago. My heart pounded. Do you know who bought it? He hesitated, then said, I cannot disclose names, but I can tell you it was purchased by someone with a local address. A man in his 50s. He paid in cash. I pressed harder. Please, it's my grandmother's ring. He finally scribbled a name on a slip of paper, sliding it across the counter. I glanced down. Robert Carver. The name sent a chill through me. Carver owned half the businesses downtown. He was known for shady deals, for squeezing families into giving up property. I drove home in silence, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. Claire was waiting on the porch, her eyes searching my face. Did you find anything? I stopped in front of her, my voice low. The ring is with Robert Carver. Her hand flew to her mouth. Oh, God. That night, sleep eluded me again. I lay awake, listening to the wind against the house, my mind churning with images of Carver holding the ring, planning his next move. If he realized its value, he could try to claim our family's trust. The following afternoon, I spotted him at the diner downtown. He sat in his usual booth, a hulking figure in a dark suit, sipping coffee as if the world belonged to him. The sight made my chest tighten with fury. I slid into a nearby booth, close enough to hear fragments of his conversation with a younger man. Something about property, about leverage, about timing. My hands clenched under the table. He already knew. I left before he could see me, my pulse racing. At home, I told Dad, who frowned deeply. This is what I feared. Carver has been circling families like ours for years. He will not let go easily. Claire whispered, What do we do? I looked at her then, my anger softening into resolve. We fight. The word hung in the air, heavy with promise. I knew the path ahead would be messy, filled with confrontation and risk. But for the first time since the nightmare began, I felt a spark of control return. The storm was gathering, and I was ready to stand in the center of it. The courthouse smelled faintly of old paper and polish, the kind of scent that clings to places where history and conflict linger. My heels clicked against the tiled floor as I followed Dad into the wide hallway, Mom at his side, Claire trailing behind us like a shadow. None of us spoke. The weight of what was about to unfold pressed into our silence. Inside the courtroom, the air was tense. Robert Carver sat at the opposite table, his frame broad and his eyes sharp, like a predator who believed the meal was already his. His attorney, a slick man in a gray suit, leaned close, whispering into his ear. I felt bile rise in my throat as Carver looked at us and smiled, a slow curl of satisfaction. Our lawyer, Mr. Grant, motioned for us to sit. He leaned toward me, his voice steady. "Stay calm. Do not let him see you rattled." I nodded, though my hands shook beneath the table. Claire sat stiffly, her gaze fixed on the floor. I wanted to be angry with her, but at that moment, I just needed her to hold herself together. The judge entered, and the room rose. When we sat again, the arguments began. Carver's attorney painted a picture of rightful ownership, presenting documents that claimed the ring now in his possession gave him standing to control the family trust. He spoke with polished certainty, each word twisting like a knife. Mr. Grant countered, his voice calm but sharp, explaining that the ring had been obtained through fraudulent means, pawned by someone with no authority. The trust, he argued, could not be dismantled by greed. I listened, my heart pounding. My eyes flicked toward Claire. Her lips moved as if in silent prayer. For a moment I wondered if she finally understood the depth of what she had set into motion. The judge asked questions, flipping through papers, his brow furrowed. Every second stretched like an hour. When Carver's lawyer produced the receipt of sale, Claire's face was drained of color. My chest clenched, but I caught a flicker of something in the judge's eyes, something that told me all was not as solid as Carver believed. During recess, I stepped outside for air. The courthouse steps were crowded with people, but I found a quiet corner, pressing a hand to my chest to steady my breathing. That was when I saw Derek leaning against a lamppost, his grin smug. My stomach dropped. "What are you doing here?" He pushed off the post, sauntering closer. "Just checking in on how things are going. I heard Carver is making quite a case." Anger surged hot through my veins. "You sold him the ring, didn't you?" He shrugged as if it meant nothing. "A man's got to make a living." I stepped closer, my voice low but shaking with fury. "You ruined my sister you stole from my family, and now you want to stand here and gloat." His grin widened, but I saw a flicker of nerves in his eyes. "Careful, sweetheart. You wouldn't want to make a scene." Before I could answer, Mr. Grant appeared, his presence sharp as a blade. "Is there a problem here?" Derek raised his hands in mock surrender, then backed away, disappearing into the crowd. My heart pounded as Mr. Grant guided me back inside. The second half of the hearing grew heavier. Carver leaned forward, confidence radiating from him. But then Mr. Grant produced something unexpected, a copy of Grandma's handwritten letter, sealed and notarized, stating that the ring could not be transferred outside the family. The words were clear, binding, and absolute. The courtroom shifted. Carver's smirk faltered. His lawyer stumbled, scrambling for a rebuttal, but the judge held up a hand. "I will review this thoroughly, but this changes the weight of your claim." Relief surged through me, mingled with the sharp edge of fear. It was not over, but Carver had been wounded. I could see it in this way his jaw clenched, his hand gripping this table until his knuckles whitened. When the session ended, we filed out in silence, the air thick with uncertainty. Outside, Claire finally spoke, her voice breaking. "I never meant for it to go this far." I looked at her, my chest heavy with both love and anger. "You may not have meant it, Claire, but intention does not erase the damage." She dropped her gaze, tears slipping down her cheeks. Dad placed a hand on my shoulder, his voice quiet but firm. "This is not finished. Carver will not back down easily." I nodded, my resolve hardening. I knew he was right. The battle was only beginning, and the next move would be more dangerous than the last. The night after the hearing stretched long and heavy. My mind replayed every look Carver gave us, every word his lawyer twisted, and every tremor in Claire's voice. I lay awake listening to the faint creaks of the house, the sound of Dad pacing in the hallway, and Mom's muffled sobs drifting through the thin walls. Sleep did not come, and when the first light bled through the blinds, I felt as if I had aged years, overnight. At breakfast, the tension was unbearable. Dad read the paper without turning a page. Mom stirred her coffee endlessly, and Claire sat hunched, her hands trembling around a slice of toast she never ate. I cleared my throat. "We cannot wait for Carver to make his next move. We need to get ahead of him." Dad looked up, his eyes tired but sharp. "What do you have in mind?" I hesitated, my heart pounding. "Derek knows more than he is letting on. He was at the courthouse yesterday. He taunted me about Carver. If anyone can tie them together, it is him. Claire's head snapped up, fear flashing across her face. Derek will never talk. He is too slippery. I leaned forward, my voice steady. Maybe not willingly, but people like Derek always leave trails. That afternoon I drove to the outskirts of town, to the dingy bar where Derek was known to waste his nights. The parking lot was littered with cigarette butts and beer bottles. I sat in my car for a long moment, my pulse racing, before forcing myself inside. The air was thick with smoke, the jukebox crackling with old rock songs. Derek sat at the bar, laughing with two men I didn't recognize. My stomach tightened as I walked toward him. His grin faded when he saw me, replaced by wary amusement. "Well, look who it is," he drawled. I ignored the mockery and sat beside him. "We need to talk." He smirked, swirling his drink. "About what?" "The ring. Carver. What you are planning." His eyes narrowed. "That sounds like a lot of accusations." I leaned closer, lowering my voice. "You think Carver will protect you, but men like him use and discard people like you. Help me stop him and maybe you walk away with less heat on your back." Derek chuckled, but I saw the flicker of doubt. Before he could answer, one of his friends slapped him on the back, breaking the tension. I left before I said something reckless, but I caught the way Derek's eyes followed me out, thoughtful and uneasy. Back home, Mr. Grant called with urgent news. Carver had filed paperwork to freeze access to the family trust until the ownership of the ring was resolved. The judge had not ruled yet, but the process could take weeks, even months. Dad's fists clenched on the table. "He is tightening the noose." Mom whispered, "We will lose everything if we do not fight harder." Claire spoke up, then her voice shaking but resolute. "I want to help." I stared at her, surprised. "You have done enough, Claire." She flinched but held her ground. "I know, and that is why I cannot sit back anymore. Derek may have used me, but I still know him. I know where he hides when he is scared." Reluctantly, I listened as she explained. Derek often stashed things at his cousin's garage on the edge of town, a place filled with broken cars and scrap metal. If he had records or evidence of his deal with Carver, it might be there. The following evening, under the cover of dusk, Claire and I drove out. The garage stood silent, the smell of oil thick in the air. My heart pounded as we crept around the back, the gravel crunching beneath our shoes. Claire pointed to a side door. "He used to keep a key under that loose brick." She bent down, pulled the brick free, and sure enough, a rusty key clattered into her hand. My palms were slick with sweat as we slipped inside. The garage was dim, littered with tools boxes and the shells of cars long abandoned. We searched in silence, every creak of the floor making my chest tighten. Finally, in a dented metal cabinet, I found a folder. Inside were receipts, notes, and one sheet with Carver's signature. It detailed the purchase of the ring and mentioned future leverage over the Baker Trust. My breath caught. This was the proof we needed. But before we could leave, headlights swept across the windows. A car door slammed. Voices carried. Derek's. Panic surged through me. We ducked behind a car frame just as the side door creaked open. Derek stepped inside, muttering to himself, followed by another man whose voice I didn't recognize. "Did Carver pay up yet?" the man asked. "Not all," Derek replied. "But he will. That ring is his ticket, and once he pulls it off, we will be set." My heart pounded so hard I thought it would give us away. Claire's hand gripped mine, her nails digging into my skin. The men moved deeper into the garage, their voices fading. Seizing the chance, I clutched the folder tight and pulled Claire toward the door. We slipped outside, running to the car with every nerve screaming. My hands shook as I fumbled with the keys, but we managed to pull out just as Derek's voice rose behind us. Back at the house, I spread the documents across the dining table. Dad's eyes widened as he read Mom's hands trembling as she touched the papers. "Mr. Grant arrived within the hour, his face lighting up when he saw the signatures. This could change everything, he said, but the victory felt fragile." I could still hear Derek's voice, still feel the danger closing in. Claire sat quietly, her face pale, her body trembling. Finally, she whispered, "I'm sorry. For all of it." For the first time in weeks, I saw sincerity in her eyes. The weight of her choices was finally crushing her. I reached for her hand, squeezing it. "We are not done yet, but this is a start." Dad exhaled, his shoulders slumping. "Carver will fight harder now." Mr. Grant nodded. "He will. But now we have something he cannot ignore." The night stretched late as we pored over the documents, piecing together the trail of lies and greed. For the first time, hope flickered in the darkness. But beneath it, a new fear grew. Carver was not the kind of man to lose quietly. And I knew deep down that the storm was about to break in ways none of us could predict. The morning after we uncovered the documents felt heavy with both relief and dread. Relief, because for the first time we held something solid in our hands, proof that Carver had been pulling strings and plotting with Derek. Dread, because I knew a man like Carver would not sit quietly while his plans unraveled. I woke up restless, pacing by the window, watching the fog lift from the fields behind our house, and wondering how long it would take before he struck back. Dad was already at the kitchen table, coffee growing cold beside him. The papers from last night spread across the wood. His jaw worked as he read the same lines over and over again. Mom moved about the kitchen in silence, her eyes red from lack of sleep. Claire shuffled in, last pale and gaunt, but she sat down without argument. There was no more denial in her, no more excuses. Only the crushing weight of what she had done and the shadow of what was still coming. We barely touched breakfast before Mr. Grant called. He wanted us to meet him at his office immediately. By the time we arrived, he was already pacing, his tie loosened, his brow slick with worry. He laid out fresh paperwork on the table. Carver had filed an injunction overnight, demanding immediate possession of the ring or compensation equal to its appraised value. Worse, he had scheduled a press conference that afternoon, threatening to expose our family as frauds, withholding a historic heirloom that supposedly belonged to him. My heart pounded as Mr. Grant explained, if he controls the narrative, the court of public opinion will follow, and judges pay attention to noise. We have to be louder, stronger, and more precise. He held up the folder we had found. This is our chance. But it will not be easy. Dad rubbed his temples. Carver has money connections, and now he wants to humiliate us. I looked at Claire. She winced under my gaze, but spoke up. Let me help. I can talk to Derek, find out more. He trusts me still, even after everything. The idea twisted my stomach. The thought of her anywhere near Derek again filled me with rage, but Mr. Grant nodded slowly. She might be the only one who can draw him out. That afternoon, while Mr. Grant prepared filings, Claire drove to Derek's cousin's garage alone. I wanted to follow, but she insisted she had to do it herself. Hours crawled by. When she returned, her hair was windswept, her cheeks flushed, her hands trembling. She dropped a small voice recorder onto the table. I got him talking, she whispered. He admitted Carver promised him money once the trust was dissolved. He bragged about how he helped set me up. My chest tightened as Mr. Grant pressed play. Derek's voice filled the room, smug and careless, spilling details that connected him directly to Carver. It was not everything, but it was enough to show conspiracy. Still, I knew it came at a cost. Claire sat silently, staring at her hands, guilt written all over her face. For the first time, I felt a strange mixture of pity and anger. She had dug us into this hole, but maybe she was finally clawing her way out. The next day, we went to court for an emergency hearing. The courtroom was packed, reporters buzzing in the back, their cameras clicking like locusts. Carver sat at the front, smug, his lawyer polished and confident. When our turn came, Mr. Grant presented the documents from the garage, then played the recording. Derek's voice echoed across the room. The effect was immediate. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, reporters scribbling furiously. Carver's smirk faltered. The judge leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Mr. Carver, these are serious allegations. His lawyer objected, but the seed of doubt was planted. As we left the courthouse, Carver's glare burned into me. He muttered something to Derek, who had appeared in the back row, his face pale and sweaty. They looked cornered but not finished. That night, the tension did not lift. I tried to sleep but woke to the sound of tires on gravel outside. My chest seized with fear. I crept to the window, heart racing. A dark car sat idling by the road. After a long moment, it pulled away. I did not tell my parents, but I knew Carver was watching, waiting. The following week was a blur of meetings, filings, and whispered conversations. Mr. Grant warned us that Carver would dig into our past, searching for any weakness to exploit. Mom fretted about old family debts, Dad about property disputes long settled. Claire barely left her room, but when she did, she worked with Mr. Grant, answering every painful question he asked about Derek, even when it left her in tears. Then came the subpoena. Carver's team demanded we turn over every document related to the trust and the ring. It felt invasive, humiliating, but Mr. Grant said it was expected. What mattered was how we responded. 2 nights before the next hearing, I sat alone in the living room, staring at the worn family Bible that Mom kept on the shelf. Tucked inside were handwritten notes from my grandmother detailing the history of the ring. My fingers traced her delicate script. She had written about love, duty, and sacrifice, about the promise that the ring would stay in the family as long as we protected it. I felt her presence in that moment urging me to stand taller, to fight harder. The day of the hearing arrived with a storm. Rain lashed against the courthouse steps as we climbed them, soaked and shivering. Inside, the air was tense. Reporters swarmed again, their cameras flashing. This time, Carver looked less confident. Derek was nowhere in sight when Mr. Grant presented the family notes alongside the garage documents, and the courtroom shifted. The judge ordered an investigation into Carver's claims and postponed his injunction. It was not victory, but it was breathing room. As we left the courthouse, Mom clutched my arm. She whispered, "We are not beaten yet." But deep down, I knew the fight was only growing sharper. Carver would not retreat. If anything, he would come harder, dirtier, and more dangerous. Back at the house, Claire broke down. She sobbed, her words tumbling out. "I thought Derek loved me. I thought he needed me. I ruined everything for a man who never cared." I sat beside her, my hand on her shoulder. "We cannot undo what is done, but we can make sure it ends here." That night, thunder rolled across the sky, rattling the windows. I stood by the glass, watching the storm, feeling it echo inside me. We had survived this round, but I could feel it in my bones. The worst was still ahead. His glare burned into me as he spat those words, and though the gavel had already fallen and the room buzzed with applause and whispers, my chest tightened with a new kind of fear. We had the ring, but Derek's threat hung in the air like smoke after a fire. My father rose first, his arm firmly around Mom as if shielding her. Claire stayed frozen, her hands trembling in her lap. I tucked the auction receipt into my purse, aware that the eyes of strangers followed us all the way out the door. Outside the building, the afternoon sun hit us hard, and for a moment I let the warmth steady me. Claire finally found her voice small and shaking. "I did not know he would show up." Dad snapped, "You knew enough. That boy is dangerous." She flinched, but then her voice cracked. "I am sorry. I swear I'm done with him." Mom touched her arm, not tenderly, but with a weary sadness. "You had better be. He almost destroyed us." We drove home in silence, except for the sound of tires humming against the road. The receipt felt heavy in my bag, heavier than the ring itself. I kept replaying Derek's face in my mind, the way his confidence had cracked when I outbid him, the fury he tried to mask. It scared me, but it also lit something fierce inside me. He had taken enough from us already. The next days passed in uneasy quiet. The auction house confirmed the ring would be delivered within a week. Dad worked longer hours at the construction site, maybe to burn off the anger that still simmered beneath his skin. Mom busied herself with chores, polishing furniture that did not need polishing, folding laundry twice. Claire kept her head down at the diner, her tips going straight into the envelope on Dad's dresser without being asked. One evening, I caught her standing outside on the porch, her phone glowing in her hand. She was scrolling through messages, her face pale. I stepped out, my voice sharp. "Is that him?" She shook her head quickly and shoved the phone in her pocket. "Not anymore. He keeps trying, but I blocked him. I wanted to believe her. I needed to believe her. But doubt curled in my chest, and I knew trust would take time." The ring arrived in a small velvet box, the diamond catching the light like fire. Mom cried when she opened it, pressing it to her chest before placing it gently in my hand. I slipped it on my throat tight, and for the first time in months I felt whole again. My grandmother's promise had not been broken after all. But the shadow of Derek did not fade. 2 nights later, a car slowed in front of our house just after midnight, headlights cutting across the yard. I stood by my bedroom window, heart pounding, as it lingered too long before speeding off. I knew in my bones it was him. The next morning, Dad drove straight to the sheriff's office, handing over everything we had. Susan's testimony, the pawn slips, the auction documents. The sheriff listened carefully, nodding as he jotted notes. He said he could not arrest Derek for bidding at an auction, but the pawn slip and the threats painted a different picture. If Derek showed up again, he would face charges for harassment. That gave us some relief, but not peace. Weeks turned into months, and slowly the air in our house shifted. Claire kept working, her hands red from washing dishes, her feet aching after double shifts. She gave up her nights out, spent weekends helping Mom in the garden, and little by little I saw the girl who had once been selfish begin to change. Trust did not return overnight, but she was earning it in small ways. One Sunday afternoon, Dad announced we were driving back to the old country house by the river. It had been sitting quiet for years, filled with memories and dust, but now he wanted us to bring it back to life. Together, we painted, cleaned, and repaired broken windows. Claire even patched the old rocking chair on the porch that Grandma used to sit in. When I looked at her, then covered in paint and sweat, I felt the first stirrings of forgiveness. As summer stretched on, I found myself sitting out there often with the ring shining on my hand. Sometimes Claire joined me, quiet and thoughtful, no excuses spilling from her lips. One evening, she whispered, "I wish I could take it all back." "You can't," I told her, "but you can choose what you do next." Her eyes glistened as she nodded. "I will." In time, Derek faded from our lives. The sheriff said he left town after a string of unpaid debts caught up to him. We did not hear from him again, though every once in a while a passing car at night still made my stomach clench. But the fear softened into memory and memory into lessons. The ring stayed where it belonged, not just on my finger, but at the heart of our family. It had nearly torn us apart, but in the end, it forced us to face truths we had been avoiding for years. Mom no longer defended Claire blindly. Dad learned to let his anger cool before it burned us all, and I found strength I did not know I carried. One warm evening, as cicadas hummed in the trees, I looked around at my family gathered on the porch. Mom was laughing softly, Dad sipping sweet tea, Claire pulling weeds she had missed earlier. The sky was pink with sunset, and for the first time in a long time, peace settled over me. Life has a way of testing us, of tearing at the seams we think will hold forever. Sometimes it takes betrayal and heartbreak to remind us of what truly matters. I had been angry, bitter, and afraid, but through it all, I learned that dignity is not lost when someone steals from you. It is lost when you let them break your spirit, and mine, despite everything, was still intact. I still wear my grandmother's ring today, not just as a reminder of her, but as a promise to myself. Family is complicated, forgiveness is hard, but strength once claimed cannot be taken again. If you were in my shoes, would you have forgiven Claire? Or would you have cut her out forever? I would love to hear your thoughts. Please share your feelings in the comments. And if you want to hear more stories like mine, make sure you subscribe and stay with me for the next one.